Commander Hyanwu pressed his face against the reinforced glass of Lunar Station's observation deck. The sight before him made his blood run cold. 3 alien ships drifted through the outer defense grid like wounded animals seeking shelter. Their hulls were blackened and torn, with gaping holes that exposed sparking machinery and flickering emergency lights within. "Sir, those aren't normal battle scars," whispered Ensign Jamin, pointing at the strange burn patterns across the alien vessels. "Look at how the metal is melted. It's like something ate through their armor." Lieutenant So Young's voice crackled over the intercom from the communications bay. "Commander, we're receiving a priority Alpha transmission. The aliens are requesting immediate audience with Earth Command. They sound desperate." Hyanwu had been stationed at Luna for 12 years, ever since humanity made first contact with alien civilizations. He'd seen diplomatic vessels, trade ships, even military escorts, but never anything like this. These ships looked like they'd barely survived the depths of hell. "Put them through to the main hologram chamber," he ordered, straightening his uniform. "And get Captain Minho up here immediately." The walk to the hologram chamber felt longer than usual. Other crew members lined the corridors, whispering among themselves as they caught glimpses of the damaged alien fleet through the portholes. Word traveled fast on a space station, and everyone knew something big was happening. Captain Minho arrived just as the holographic projector hummed to life. The figure that materialized before them was unlike any alien they'd encountered before. The being was tall and graceful, with translucent blue skin that seemed to shimmer like water. Normally, the Vulcans were known for their serene beauty and peaceful demeanor, but this one looked exhausted, his large eyes filled with terror. "I am Ambassador Thalish of the Vulcan Accord," the alien began, his voice carrying a musical quality despite the obvious strain. "Humans of Earth, we come, not as conquerors or traders, but as the desperate remnants of dying worlds." The ambassador paused, his breathing labored. Behind him, other Vulcans moved frantically, tending to what appeared to be injured crew members. "The Devourers have awakened," Thalish continued, and something in his voice made every human in the room shiver. Captain Minho stepped forward, his weathered face serious. "Devourers, we've never heard this term before." The hologram flickered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images that made several crew members gasp. Vast mechanical constructs moved through space like metal locusts, each one the size of a city. They moved with purpose, surrounding beautiful blue-green worlds. "Ancient machines from the void between galaxies," Thalish explained, his voice breaking. "They consume worlds completely, strip them of all matter or life, leaving only empty space where entire civilizations once thrived." The images shifted, showing the systematic destruction of a planet. The mechanical swarm descended like a plague, and within hours the world was gone. Not destroyed in the traditional sense, but literally consumed, leaving nothing but void where millions had lived. 3 of our 7 worlds are already gone," the ambassador continued. "Kelvar, our cultural center where art and music flourished for thousands of years. Dalasios, our agricultural world that fed billions. Nereid Prime, our military stronghold, with defenses we thought impregnable." Lieutenant So Young covered her mouth in horror as the images showed the final moments of these worlds. Cities that had stood for millennia crumbled as the mechanical devourers stripped away the very ground beneath them. "Our remaining 4 worlds will fall within cycles if we cannot find aid," Thalish said, his composure finally breaking. "We have tried everything. Our quantum energy weapons cannot penetrate their adaptive hulls. Our fastest ships cannot outrun their scouts. Our combined fleets scatter like dust before their infinite numbers." Commander Hyanwu watched as the hologram showed Vulcan military vessels engaging the mechanical swarm. The alien ships fired beautiful streams of blue energy, But the attacks simply absorbed into the enemy hulls. Within minutes, the Velgan fleet was overwhelmed, their graceful ships torn apart by mechanical claws and energy beams. "How many survivors?" asked Captain Minho quietly, from 3 entire worlds. Alicia's voice was barely a whisper. "Perhaps a few thousand. Everyone else." He couldn't finish the sentence. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of the space station's life support systems. The crew members looked at each other, struggling to comprehend the scale of the tragedy they were witnessing. "We have searched the galaxy for aid," the ambassador continued. "The Centauri Council formed a committee to study the threat. The Orion Alliance scheduled a diplomatic conference to discuss potential responses. The Galactic Federation is still debating whether to officially recognize the Devourers as a legitimate threat." Vailish looked directly at Commander Heinwu. "But we have heard stories about humans, stories of a species that doesn't hesitate when others suffer, a people who act while others debate." The desperation in the alien's voice was heartbreaking. "We offer you everything we have. Our quantum healing technology that can repair any injury. Our star maps showing safe passages through unexplored space. Our historical archives containing the wisdom of 100,000 years. Anything, everything. For your help." Haianwu felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. Round the chamber, his crew stood frozen, absorbing the magnitude of what they'd just witnessed. These weren't just alien refugees asking for sanctuary. They were the last survivors of an extinction event, begging humanity to stand against an enemy that had already consumed entire worlds. The commander looked at Captain Minho, then at his crew. In their eyes, he saw the same determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. While other galactic civilizations formed committees and held conferences, humans had always had a different approach to extinction level threats. "Ambassador," Haianwu said quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind, "you will have your answer within 48 hours. The red alert klaxons hadn't stopped wailing for 3 hours. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in the reinforced chambers of Earth Command, Admiral Jihoon stood before a wall of holographic displays showing every human settlement from Mercury to the outer colon. His weathered hands gripped the podium as he addressed the emergency council. "Gentlemen, ladies, we have 45 hours to save an entire species." His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Total mobilization, effective immediately. This is not a drill." The transformation that followed would be remembered as the most rapid military conversion in human history. Within the first hour, civilian communication networks buzzed with emergency broadcasts. Factory workers on Earth received orders to abandon their regular production lines. Space truckers hauling ice from the outer system suddenly found their cargo holds commandeered for a military supplies. Marcus Chen, the shipyard foreman in the asteroid belt, had been building luxury passenger liners just that morning. Now he stood, watching as his crew stripped away elegant dining halls and observation lounges, replacing them with missile launchers and armor plating. "Boss, the welders are asking if we should really be mounting these torpedo tubes where the swimming pool used to be," called out his assistant, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Tell them to work faster," Marcus replied, studying the blueprints that had arrived just hours earlier. "We're not building cruise ships anymore. We're building weapons." On the agricultural colony of New Terra, Farmer Yuki Tanaka received a message that changed everything. Her vast wheat fields, which had fed millions across the solar system, were being converted overnight. Massive harvesting machines now collected emergency rations and combat supplies instead of grain. "Mom, why are we loading protein bars instead of real food?" asked her teenage son, confused by the sudden change. Because somewhere out there, people are dying, Yuki replied, her hands never stopping as she packed medical supplies, and our boys and girls are going to help them. Dr. Yunjin had barely slept since the Velkan fragments arrived at her weapons laboratory on Mars. Her team worked round the clock, analyzing pieces of metal that seemed to shift and change even under microscopic examination. The coffee had run out hours ago, but nobody cared. Look at this. She called to her assistant, pointing at a microscopic section of Devour armor. Watch what happens when I hit it with a laser. The metal absorbed the energy completely. Then its molecular structure shifted, becoming thicker and more reflective. It's learning, whispered Dr. Park, her face pale with exhaustion and amazement. The armor literally adapts to whatever attacks it. Dr. Yunjin straightened up, her back aching from hours bent over the equipment. She looked at the assembled military leaders who had gathered for her briefing. Colonel Dong Hyen stood at the front, his face bearing scars from humanity's first alien contact wars. Their adaptive armor learns from each hit, she explained, her voice hoarse. Conventional energy weapons become useless after the first few strikes. Kinetic rounds work initially. But then the armor adapts to those too. Colonel Dong Hyun's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. Then we don't use conventional weapons. We use everything else. The mobilization shocked even Earth's longtime allies. Ambassador Krell of the Centauri Republic watched in amazement as Earth's shipyards launched. Vessel after vessel, each one bristling with weapons that seemed to defy standard military doctrine. They are mounting mining lasers alongside military cannons. He reported to his homeworld. Their cargo ships carry torpedo launchers. I've seen civilian transports equipped with enough firepower to level a city. Captain Yunseo stood on the bridge of what had been a simple cargo hauler just 48 hours earlier. The Pride of Bison now looked like a floating weapons platform, with missile pods bolted to her hull and kinetic cannons mounted where cargo cranes used to be. Her crew was just as unusual as her ship. Former merchant captain Kim Woo-bin served as her first officer. Engineer Park Soo-jin had been designing water purification systems before volunteering for military conversion. Even her communications officer, Lee Min-yoon, had been a high school teacher until 3 days ago. Ma'am, reported Ensign Boram, barely 18 and still wearing coveralls from the farming colony where she'd grown up. The Vulcan ships are asking why we're bringing mining equipment to a space battle. Yunseo looked out at the massive fleet assembling round them. Industrial ships designed for asteroid mining floated alongside hastily converted passenger liners. Construction vessels meant for building space stations now carried enough explosives to crack moons. Tell them they're about to learn why humans survived the Ice Age, she said with a grim smile. The departure from Earth's system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Over 800 vessels formed the largest armada humanity had ever assembled. But this wasn't a traditional military fleet. These were farmers and teachers, miners and engineers, shopkeepers and students, all willing to travel across the galaxy to fight monsters they'd never seen. Ambassador Thalish watched from his damaged ship as the human fleet took formation. The Vulcans had expected perhaps a small military response, maybe a few dozen warships. Instead, they witnessed an entire civilization mobilizing for a war. I don't understand. Thalish transmitted to the human command ship. Why would your people risk everything for strangers? We are not your allies. We have no treaties or trade agreements. Admiral Ji-hoon's response came back immediately, his voice calm but filled with steel. Ambassador, you said your people were dying. That's all we needed to know, as the massive fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the Vulcan system and an enemy that had already destroyed entire worlds. Other alien civilizations throughout the galaxy received the same message. Humanity was going to war, not for conquest or resources, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The Devourers had never faced anything like this before. They had conquered thousands of worlds, absorbed countless civilizations, but they had never encountered a species that would willingly sacrifice everything for complete strangers. They were about to learn that humans fought differently than anyone else in the galaxy. The hyperspace jump ended with a violent shudder that rattled every bolt in the human fleet. Admiral Ji-hoon gripped his command chair as the stars realigned themselves outside the bridge. Windows. What he saw next made his blood freeze. The Devourer fleet stretched across the void like a nightmare made of metal and death. Massive geometric shapes drifted through space, each one larger than Earth's moon. Their surfaces weren't smooth like normal spacecraft. Instead, they crawled with millions of tiny mechanical creatures, self-repairing nanites that constantly rebuilt and reinforced the whole. "Sweet mother of," whispered Navigation Officer Cho Young, her voice trailing off as she stared at the tactical display. Lieutenant Haewon's hands shook as she read the sensor data. "Admiral, the flagship. We're designating it Harvester Prime, mass equivalent to a small planet. I count over 3,000 smaller vessels, each one the size of our largest battleships." The enemy moved with terrifying precision. No wasted motion, no unnecessary energy expenditure. They advanced on the last Velkan stronghold like a mechanical tide, unstoppable and merciless. Admiral Ji-hoon watched the tactical display update in real time. The Devourer ships were already scanning the human fleet, their adaptive shields shifting frequency to counter the sensor sweeps. Even now, before the battle began, they were learning. "Communications, open channel to all ships," he ordered. His voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his stomach. "All vessels, this is Admiral Ji-hoon. You can see what we're facing. These things learn from patterns, adapt to strategies, so we're going to do something they won't expect." He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew, farmers, miners, teachers, all of them volunteers who'd left their families to fight monsters in deep space. "We're going to be completely unpredictable. No formation flying, no coordinated attacks. Each ship fights however they think best. Show these machines what human creativity looks like." The first shot came from Captain Namgil's converted freighter, the Soul's Pride. Instead of the expected energy beam, he fired a stream of industrial adhesive normally used for ship repairs. The sticky substance splattered across the Devourer drone, clogging its sensors and weapon ports. "All ships, weapons free," shouted Admiral Ji-hoon. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Velkan survivors watched in amazement as the human fleet abandoned every rule of space warfare. Ships broke formation, attacked from impossible angles, and used weapons that no military textbook had ever mentioned. Lieutenant Commander In-suk piloted her converted mining vessel, the Bison Digger, straight into the enemy formation, her industrial cutting laser, designed to slice through asteroids, carved into a Devourer cruiser's hull before its adaptive armor could just target their joints. She radioed to the fleet, "Where the nanites can't reach." The Devourer response was swift and brutal. Energy beams lanced out from their ships, each one capable of vaporizing a human vessel, but the humans refused to fight the weather. Machines expected. Captain Park Hyun-sik's cargo hauler, loaded with frozen food supplies, used its emergency cargo ejection system to launch frozen meat at enemy sensors. The ridiculous attack actually worked, temporarily blinding several Devourer scouts. Did they just attack us with hamburger?" transmitted Ensign Kim from another ship. "Whatever works," replied Captain Park, already loading his next unconventional ammunition. The real shock came when Captain Namgil's ship took critical damage. His engines were gone. His weapons offline. His hull breached in 12 places. Any normal captain would have ordered evacuation. This is Captain Amgil to all ships. His voice crackled over the radio. Soul's pride is going down fighting. Tell my wife I love her. The converted freighter's engines roared to life one final time, pushing the dying ship directly into the side of a Devour destroyer. The explosion lit up the void like a miniature sun, taking both vessels with it. The Devourers paused for 3 seconds. Their perfect formation wavered as they processed what had just happened. No species in their memory had ever deliberately destroyed their own vessels as weapons. Sergeant Quan-Su saw the hesitation and seized the moment. His boarding pod, little more than a metal tube with engines, smashed through the hull of a Devourer cruiser. Inside, the mechanical defenders waited with energy weapons and plasma cannons. Surprise! Quan-Su shouted, opening fire with a weapon the ancient machines had never encountered before. A simple gunpowder rifle, the mechanical defenders, programmed to counter advanced energy weapons, simply couldn't process the primitive kinetic projectiles. Bullets punched through their armor while they calculated responses to attacks that weren't coming. Marines, remember your training. Quan-Su called to his squad. Explosives, kinetics, anything that goes boom. Hand grenades, shotguns. Even improvised flamethrowers turned from mining equipment tore through the Devour ships. Interior, the machines fought back, but their tactics were designed for modern warfare, not the primitive brutality that humans had perfected over thousands of years. Commander Sangmin's fighter squadron faced a swarm of Devour drones, each one a perfect killing machine. The enemy fighters moved in flawless formation, their weapons tracking with mechanical precision. They're learning our attack patterns. Called out pilot Li Chanwu's, his fighter barely avoided a barrage of energy bolts. Then stop. Having patterns, Sangmin replied, throwing his fighter into a spin that would have killed any normal pilot. Fly like you're crazy. The human pilots abandoned formation completely. Some flew upside down, others barrel-rolled through asteroid fields, and a few actually started flying backwards while shooting over their shoulders. The Devour drones, programmed for illogical combat, couldn't predict insane tactics. But the enemy was learning. Admiral Ji-Hun watched the tactical display as Devour ships began adapting to human unpredictability. Their hulls grew thicker, their weapons more varied, their movements less predictable. They're getting smarter, reported Lieutenant Haywan. But sir, look at this. She highlighted several Devour units on the display. Instead of the perfect coordination they'd shown before, these ships were moving erratically, almost randomly. They're trying to copy our chaos, she explained. But they can't. They're machines. Chaos breaks their programming. The battle raged. For 18 hours, human ships fell like leaves in a storm, their crews fighting to the last breath. The converted civilian vessels, never designed for combat, suffered terrible losses. 67 ships destroyed, over 12,000 personnel lost. But something unprecedented was happening. The perfect Devourer formation was breaking down. Ships that had moved in harmony for eons now struggled to coordinate their attacks. Their adaptive programming, designed to counter logical strategies, was failing when faced with human logic. All ships, this is Admiral Ji-Hun, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders. We've heard them. Keep fighting. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent people. As the first battle of the war ended, both sides withdrew to assess the damage. The Devourers had won tactically. But for the first time in their existence, they faced an enemy that didn't make sense. An enemy that turned chaos into a weapon. The real war was just beginning. The war changed everything. What started as a rescue mission became something that would haunt the galaxy's nightmares for generations. while other civilizations watched. From the safety of their borders, humans unleashed a kind of warfare that defied every rule of civilized combat. Engineer Taihan crouched inside a hollowed-out asteroid, his hands working frantically on what had once been simple mining equipment. Round him, his team converted industrial charges into weapons of mass destruction. The asteroid belt had become humanity's secret weapon factory, hidden from Devour senses. "Boss, are you sure about this?" asked his assistant, Mechanic Jinsu, watching as Taihan connected the final wires to a charge powerful enough to crack a moon. "If we can't outfight them, we'll outthink them," Taihan muttered, sweat dripping onto the explosive device. He programmed the weapon to follow a flight pattern that made no logical sense, spiraling through space, doubling back, even sitting motionless for random periods before striking. The first planet-killer charge hit a Devourer mothership 3 days later. The massive vessel, confident in its adaptive shields, made no attempt to evade what appeared to be a simple mining explosive. The detonation vaporized the entire front section of the ship, taking out thousands of mechanical drones. But Taihan's real genius wasn't in the explosions, it was in the chaos. Each weapon followed completely random attack patterns, driving the Devourer tactical computers into endless calculation loops as they tried to predict the unpredictable. "Look at this," he called to his team, pointing at intercepted Devourer communications. "Their targeting systems are spending so much processing power trying to figure out our attack patterns that they're missing obvious targets. Deep in the research labs of the converted cargo ship New Seoul, Dr. Mi Young worked on something that would have horrified peacetime scientists. Her laboratory looked like a scene from a nightmare. Chemical vats bubbling with corrosive compounds, radiation warning signs everywhere, and her team working in protective suits that couldn't completely shield them from the dangerous materials. The bioweapon is ready for a field testing," she announced to Admiral Ji-hoon during their daily briefing. Her voice was hoarse from chemical exposure, and her hands shook slightly from radiation poisoning. "Are you sure about this, Doctor?" the Admiral asked, noting the pale faces of her research team. "Your people look like they're dying. We knew the risks when we volunteered," Dr. Mi Young replied firmly. "This compound will eat through their nanite repair systems. We tested it on captured Devourer hull fragments. It spreads like a virus through their metal." The first bioweapon attack came during a routine skirmish. Human fighters dropped canisters of the corrosive compound onto Devourer ships. Within hours, the enemy vessels began falling apart as their self-repair systems turned against them, the nanites consuming their own hulls in an endless loop of malfunction. Major Woojin's Psychological Warfare Division operated from a converted passenger liner that had been transformed into something resembling a military think tank. Maps covered every wall, showing Devourer movement patterns and behavioral analysis. "The enemy is exhibiting what we can only describe as machine paranoia," he reported during a strategy meeting with the fleet's senior officers. "They're starting to see threats that don't exist." "Explain," ordered Admiral Ji-hoon. "We've been sending false signals, fake fleet movements, dummy attacks," Major Woojin continued. "The Devourers are adapting so fast to counter non-existent threats that they're leaving themselves vulnerable to real ones. Yesterday, they repositioned an entire battle group to counter a fake invasion that was actually just radio interference from a solar storm. The breakthrough came when Captain Jun-ho's science team managed to capture a functioning Devourer communication relay, working round the clock in the cramped laboratory of their converted mining ship. They dissected the alien technology piece by piece. Their network is their strength and their weakness," Captain Jun-ho explained to the assembled commanders. His eyes were bloodshot from days without sleep, and coffee stains covered his uniform. Every ship, Every drone, every weapon system is connected. They share information instantly across vast distances. Dr. Hyen Suk, the team's lead programmer, stepped forward. Her hands shook from exhaustion and the stimulants she'd been taking to stay awake for 72 hours straight. "We can introduce chaos algorithms into their network," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Force their adaptive programming to evolve contradictory solutions simultaneously. Make them fight themselves." The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer network, they would corrupt it, turn the machine's greatest strength into a weapon against them. The implementation required the ultimate sacrifice. Human ships began targeting Devourer communication nodes with kamikaze attacks. These weren't military strikes, they were suicide. Missions designed to plant virus programs in the enemy network. Lieutenant Sang-woo volunteered for the first mission. His fighter had been damaged in the previous battle. Its engines held together with spare parts and hope. As he approached the massive Devourer command ship, his radio crackled with final goodbyes from his squadron. "This is Lieutenant Sang-woo to all ships." His voice was calm despite the impossible odds he faced. "Tell my parents I was proud to serve. Tell the Vulcans we kept our promise." The Devourer command ship's defenses opened fire, energy beams lancing through space toward the tiny human fighter. Sang-woo dodged and weaved, his damaged ship sparking with each near miss. "For Earth," he shouted into his radio. "For the Vulcans, for everyone who still draws breath in this galaxy." His fighter smashed into the communication bay at the heart of the Devourer ship. The explosion was small compared to the massive vessel, but the virus he carried spread through their network like wildfire. Within hours, similar attacks followed across the battle zone. Pilot after pilot made the ultimate sacrifice, crashing their ships into enemy relay stations. Each attack created larger gaps in the machine network, spreading the chaos algorithms deeper into their collective consciousness. The effects were immediate and terrifying. Devourer ships that had moved in perfect harmony for eons began firing on each other, their adaptive programming corrupted by human-designed chaos. "Couldn't distinguish between friend and foe. It's working," reported communications officer Lee from the command ship. "The virus is spreading faster than they can contain it. Entire battle groups are turning on each other." But the victory came at a price that would haunt the survivors forever. Hundreds of human pilots had died in the kamikaze attacks. Thousands more suffered from radiation exposure and chemical poisoning from the unconventional weapons they'd created. Ambassador Thalish watched the battle from his damaged ship, his aquatic features pale with shock. "What have we asked them to become?" he whispered to his aide. "These humans, they're destroying themselves to save us." The galaxy would never forget what humans were capable of when pushed to total war. They had turned chaos into a weapon, sacrifice into strategy and their own mortality into the enemy's weakness. The Devourers were learning that some species don't just fight to win. They fight to ensure their enemies can never threaten anyone again. The silence was deafening. Admiral Dayun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, humanity's last functioning battle cruiser, watching something that defied belief. The massive Devourer fleet, which had been systematically destroying everything in its path just moments before, had simply stopped moving. "Ma'am, I'm reading massive system failures across the entire enemy fleet," reported communications officer Yin Chu, her voice cracking with exhaustion. She'd been at her station for nearly 40 hours straight, coordinating the desperate final attacks. Their central intelligence network, it's completely crashed. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the chaos algorithms, planted by hundreds of sacrificed human pilots, spread like a digital plague through the Devourer network. What started as small glitches in their communication system had grown into complete system-wide madness. "Look at Sector 7. whispered Navigator Kim Jin-ho, pointing at his tactical display. The lead destroyer just fired on its own support. Ships across the entire star system, the ancient machines that had terrorized civilizations for countless eons, were turning their weapons on each other. A massive Devourer mothership, larger than most moons, suddenly erupted in internal explosions as its own defensive systems identified it as a threat. Their programming can't handle the contradictions, explained Chief Science Officer Park So-young, her voice filled with amazed horror. The chaos algorithms are forcing their adaptive systems to evolve opposing solutions to the same problems. They literally don't know who they are anymore. The spectacle was both beautiful and terrifying. Geometric ships that had moved with perfect precision now spun wildly through space, firing randomly at anything that moved. Some vessels began consuming themselves, their nanite repair systems turning into self-destructive swarms. Lieutenant Commander Yu Chae-sung, whose fighter squadron had been reduced to just 3 operational aircraft, watched a Devourer battle group tear itself apart. It's like watching a machine having a nervous breakdown, he transmitted to the command ship. The collapse accelerated with each passing hour. What had taken humanity's greatest sacrifice to achieve was now happening automatically. The virus, programs, each one carried by a pilot who gave their life to deliver it, had created a cascade failure that no amount of Devourer technology could stop. Admiral, call out sensor operator Lee Minji. Massive energy signatures from the enemy flagship. It's shutting down. The Harvester Prime, the planet-sized command vessel that had seemed unstoppable, began going dark, section by section. Its lights flickered out as its corrupted intelligence systems fought against themselves. The massive ship that had consumed entire worlds was being destroyed by its own confusion. Young Ensign Choi Sang-ho, fresh from the farming colonies and now one of the few surviving bridge officers, stared at the display in wonder. Are we actually winning? Admiral Do-yoon didn't answer immediately. She was thinking of the 800 ships that had started this mission and the barely 200 that remained operational. She thought of Lieutenant Sang-woo and the hundreds of other pilots who had crashed their fighters into enemy communication. Ray's victory had come at a price that would haunt her forever. Yes, she finally said, her voice heavy with loss and pride. We're winning. The retreat began without warning. The surviving Devourer ships, their network too damaged to coordinate proper attacks, simply turned and fled toward the edge of known space. Some moved in straight lines, others in wild spirals, but all were running from an enemy they could no longer understand. Captain Park Hyun-min, commanding one of the few remaining destroyers, requested permission to pursue. Admiral, should we follow them, finish them off? Negative, Da-yoon replied. Let them go. Let them remember what happens when they threaten innocent people. 3 days later, Ambassador Thalicia's transmission reached not just the human fleet, but Earth itself. The Vulcan's aquatic features showed a mixture of joy and bewilderment as he spoke to the camera. He Vulcan worlds are saved, he began, his musical voice carrying across light years of space. Your species has achieved what we thought impossible. The Devourers are gone, fled to the void between galaxies. But we must ask, why? Why did you sacrifice so much for strangers you barely knew? The question reached Earth during a memorial service for the fallen. Families gathered in parks and public spaces, watching the transmission on giant screens. The names of the dead scrolled endlessly: pilots, engineers, scientists, all volunteers who had left their homes to fight monsters in deep space. Captain Sojin, now one of the senior surviving officers, stood before the camera in the command ship's briefing room. Her uniform was patched and stained, her face bearing the marks of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Behind her, The few remaining members of humanity's greatest fleet worked to repair their damaged ships. Because it was the right thing to do, she said simply, her words carrying the weight of absolute conviction. News of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the Centauri Republic, politicians who had opposed military aid to the Vulcans quietly resigned. The Orion Alliance, which had scheduled a conference to discuss the Devourer threat, cancelled their meetings and sent immediate offers of alliance to Earth. But it was the private communications between alien governments that revealed the true impact of humanity's actions. Diplomatic cables spoke of updating first contact protocols and military assessments. The galaxy had learned to fundamental truths about the human species first. Humans would die for complete strangers without hesitation. They had traveled across the galaxy, risking everything, for people they had never met simply because those people needed help. Second, humans didn't fight wars just to win. They fought to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. The Devourer network wasn't just defeated. It was broken so completely that the ancient machines would never recover their collective intelligence, the Zephyrian Council. One of the galaxy's oldest civilizations sent a formal message to Earth. Command, we have watched your species for decades, dismissing you as young and reckless. We now understand that what we mistook for recklessness was actually courage. And what we saw as chaos was creativity beyond our comprehension on Earth. Children learned new stories about heroes who fought monsters among the stars. But those who survived the war knew the truth was more complex. They had won not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through humanity's willingness to embrace chaos. Sacrifice everything and fight with a creativity born of absolute desperation and unwavering moral conviction. Admiral Dayun stood once more at an observation window. But this time she watched the blue-green model of Earth growing larger as the fleet returned home. Behind her, the bridge crew prepared for their homecoming, knowing they would be greeted as heroes but carrying the memories of friends who would never see home again. "Ma'am," asked Communications Officer Ian Ju, "what do we tell the families of those we lost?" Dayun was quiet for a long moment, watching Earth's sun warm her face through the reinforced glass. "We tell them their loved one saved an entire species. We tell them that somewhere out there, children are alive because of what we did here. The war was over, but its legacy would endure forever." From that day forward, no species in the galaxy would ever again mistake human kindness for weakness, or human friendship for anything less than the most valuable alliance in the cosmos. The galaxy had learned to fear human enemies. But more importantly, it had learned to treasure human friends. *The Indie*.